Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Market Check, brought to you by BB. There is no second best live YouTube stream to talk about the markets. Welcome back, guys. Merry Christmas, soon to be Happy New Year. We hope everybody had a great last few days, spending time with family, celebrating the holidays, whatever you needed to do to get some necessary detox from these markets, which, as you can see from the screen, have not really moved over the holiday season. Hopefully you didn't spend too much time trying to trade that instead of spending time with family or, celebrating. But regardless, welcome back, guys. I'm Snorlax. You also know me as Tommy. I'm joined by Big Louie, Max, and of course, Prometheus. We're going to have a great show for you all today. It is Monday, December 29th. We're back hitting the grindstone. And we're just kind of waiting for this market to make a decision on direction, right? Are you going to nuke? Are we going to begin a recovery? Are we going to bounce and then nuke? Are we going to dip and then pump? We're going to talk about all of that, of course, with the coins, equity markets, and even the movement that we're seeing in precious metals as well, which have been pretty abnormal also. So got to talk about that. But before we can get started, guys, I'm going to ask if you got any leftover Christmas spirit, if you could lend us a like on this video. Let's run it up today. This is going to be one of our last show. I actually think this is the last market check of the year, correct?
Tomorrow.
Wait,
no,
tomorrow.
we don't have it tomorrow.
We don't have one.
Yeah.
And it's New Year's Eve on Wednesday, so
yeah.
Maybe we have one, maybe we don't. Regardless, lend us your like button, guys. You always you help us keep the lights on here at BB YouTube. And we love doing these shows for you guys. So if you could oblige and hit the like button for us as well, we would be very, very appreciative. But all right, the market has, I really was hoping that by the time we did these shows again, I'd be able to talk about some fresh volatility in markets. But unfortunately, the only people who seem to be winning are the volatility shorters. And I mean, I don't even know if the microstructure scalpers I highly doubt they're winning in this in these conditions right now. I mean, just look at Bitcoin.
There's no way.
Everything, man. These are horrendous conditions to be trading at least crypto in. Equities, the jury's still kind of out, but yeah, we're just waiting for crypto to make a move. And I think, when we look on a higher time frame, something like ETH and Solana, they're two altcoins, right? They kind of give us maybe a clearer picture than Bitcoin of what the true directionality of the market is. For when I look at ETH on a higher time frame, it's like we're in a very clear pivot point where you're either about to see selling really start to accelerate and waterfall down a full range low rotation, or we're potentially about to see a bottom form here, right? Because that structure just in and of itself does not look the worst the longer that you chop here and establish value, right? You can argue some other altcoins look absolutely terrible. And I would say, yeah, I agree. In fact, one of them is Solana, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But right, we're looking at ETH, and it is, I think, just in this very binary point where I think you can justify a bullish or a bearish case, and we're just kind of waiting on the market to decide which one has the the most legs to stand on. I look at something like Solana, and I'm able to see, I think, that lower time frame downtrend, specifically the strength of it over the last few weeks, right? Every single high throughout the month of pretty much all of December has been protected. And we've been in this very methodical, controlled downtrend where you have these small spikes up that get sold into before they can break any market structure. And I think to a large degree, something like Solana in unison with ETH and obviously other, signals, whatever you want to look at, they're going to be really telling us very clearly which direction this market is going to be trending. 3 month is basically a 3-month downtrend at this point. So are we going to see the strength of that downtrend overtake something like Solana, which is now trading into range lows, and we're going to see a nuke? Or are we going to see range lows and really the high time frame cyclical trend remain to be strong and hold price up here? But how are we feeling about the markets, guys? Merry Christmas. I know I'm a little bit late. Hope we had a great time celebrating with family. How are we feeling about things as we come into the end of the year?
Well, this price action one is abysmal. I mean, this is
insanity on a chart if you were to describe it. I am glad I stepped away from the markets over the past week. That's for sure. We, like you've been saying, Tommy, it's kind of one of those markets where you just wait and you be patient and let structure or direction show itself. Because right now, I mean, I'm sure Max, you looked. OI came in last night heavily. I'm sure you looked, Tommy. I'm sure you looked, Louis, and just immediate reversal. I mean, it's just more of the same. It's more of the same that we've seen this entire month. And as of right now, I'm just being super patient. For me, it's kind of one of those things where you got to kind of break above 90K and accept above it for more than like 2 hours for me to remain like, or to think that, okay, we're going to see continuation. And then to the downside, for me, a very important level is kind of the 80, sub 85K level. If you look at the chart and from a macro perspective, that was a very, very, very important inflection point on the chart. You saw a lot of sellers come in. That was also during the BOJ announcement. We saw a lot of passive buyers absorb those sellers. And if you start dropping below that 85K level, it's pretty indicative of me that you're going to be seeing new lows. That's also the same day that volatility in VIX broke its structure. So if you're seeing Bitcoins break below that price point on the day that not only we had decent news come from the BOJ, decent-ish news come from the BOJ, right? They didn't hike rates higher than expected. And you also saw volatility collapse in on itself. We drop below there. It's pretty cooked at that point. So until then, being patient. Altcoins, I think, are a liquid slot, but that doesn't mean that, you can't see massive liquidity hunts. And I think there's a lot of very, very, very complacent shorts in altcoins right now that I think are probably going to be taken out to the woodshed here sooner rather than later. I'd be very shocked if they just let them ride these down, another, 30% lower from here. So that's kind of what I'm looking at.
I mean, we're doing the same thing we're doing a couple weeks ago, but we're over here now. We're over here now. We were over there, and now we're over here. We're doing the same thing. Are you having fun, Anon?
Forget about it.
Yeah, it's just honestly, I didn't even get a chance to look at the pump last night. It was late. I was, going to bed. I was like, I'll take a look in the morning. I woke up and we were already back below where we started that little move last night. But it's more of the same. Up, down, 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 up, down. Like, it's why we've just been saying, like, either wait for 93, 94K on Bitcoin or wait for these lows to start getting taken out. But doing business in the middle, not profitable, not worth your time. And if you're betting on the higher time frame trend, like Tommy mentioned, it's to the downside. We're in a high time frame downtrend, have been for well over a month or two now. Betting on the trend puts the probabilities in your favor. Right, so do these lows go untapped? Probably not. Right, so my bet is on coming into these lows at some point. I don't think we can do this forever. So just waiting for that or waiting for a miraculous save. They can sustain price back above 93, 94K. Great. I look for longs, right? But until then, I'm looking for more downside and waiting to see how we react at these lows, right? 84K. 80K. And if we lose 80K, we can't sustain this low. Next set of high time frame supply or demand, I'm sorry, is high 70s, low 60s, right, in this area. So that's kind of what we're waiting for, right? If I had to bet on where we're going next, it's in this demand area. But we will see. We will see.
Yeah, I don't think there's gonna be a whole lot of really honest price action until at least the new year, right? I think we're seeing a lot of tax loss harvesting going on, um, which, by the way, could buoy us a lot higher when that's all done. You know, crypto's red on the year, Bitcoin's red, altcoins deep red. A lot of extra sell pressure down here at these lows because of the harvesting that's going on. So I think that also needs to be considered for a potential bullish catalyst, being like that very obvious everything is red in crypto harvesting opportunity is now behind us. We could see some major buybacks. Additionally, you have funds, realizing profits or losses, again, kind of at the end of the year for equities, probably more so profits. So you're getting kind of junky price action in equity markets. I'm seeing a lot of contradictions right now. Like I'm seeing a lot of stuff that looks sort of constructive. And then on the other hand, I'm seeing a lot of things that just look unresolved, for lack of a better term. So I'm kind of in the waiting camp personally. Like there's nothing to do until January 1st at least.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Man, I don't even, if I look back to 23 and you guys remember it, after we had the nuke from 30K down to 25 and volatility just, I mean, was non-existent within the markets. We did have some SEC news, I believe, around that time in regards to Ripple and XRP, and it was pretty choppy. But we did, or I shouldn't say it was choppy. I mean, we reverted 2 or 3 moves within that like localized range, but it's not as aggressive as what we're seeing this morning. Like this morning, it was interesting. We saw like CVD, a massive fall off in CVD, right? We saw a ton of selling going on, and then you just saw OI just come in, gregariously and just immediately revert the move. It's like Tommy said, I don't even think microstructure quants are, are successfully trading this. It's extremely manipulative, and I want to be very careful here, like I said, because it seems structures don't look great, right? Every pump is getting sold into, but if you can get some form of unwind in regards to altcoins, I think the pump is probably we're gonna pump a lot higher than people expect. But high time frame, this is not a bottom structure for me at all. So
it's kind of a tricky spot, market, I think, because I kind of pointed it out in my intro, but I look at something like Ethereum, and I think that it's pretty easy for me to see this structure kind of ending up going either way, right? Gun to my head, I think it's probably going lower. That has been my bias for a long time. But I also said a few weeks ago that the best thing that could happen for bulls is that we start to carve out value, we start to range. And that's kind of what we've seen, right? I mean, a lot of it had to do, sure, with our options, with the positioning around our year-end options expiration on the 26th, which is now officially out of the way, by the way. So if you hate the pinned nature of this price action, you're going to love to hear that, right? At the very least. But I do think that the more we range here, the more constructive things begin to look for bulls. But yeah, I mean, it's like, are we going to pump out of here, or are we potentially looking at a shallow shoulder before we go lower? And this is where I'll go back to something like ETH BTC and Bitcoin dominance, that I think Bitcoin dominance is communicating that kind of like this super aggressive trending price action is closer than most people probably think, right? Like we're either getting close to or we're either in a shallow shoulder right before we're going to nuke really hard, or this is the bottom and we're going to begin trending higher again fairly soon. I think I pointed this out on the morning call today, but The amount of time that Bitcoin and ETH have now been ranging at these current prices is about like 2/3 of the period that Bitcoin ranged in March and April before it bottomed. So, I think we're getting closer to being bullish, I think, from a timing standpoint. And I also don't think that time is really a bear's friend, especially when we look at equity markets and financials that are just pressing up against the roof of price discovery right now.
Man, you look at too a lot of these defensive stocks. You look at energy companies like I think XOM. There's a company that I really prefer called AROC. They look so good. Like they look so really so good, man.
Yeah.
Copper looks like it's about to freaking explode to the upside. Like copper looks like it could double in like 3 months. Oil looks like really weak. It's the strangest. It's like one of the strangest markets I've never seen the amount of decorrelation or decoupling between different assets as I have over the past 2 months. And that leads me to believe, is there that regime shift? Like, is this a, signal of weakness for the market, right? Or is this just, like I said, a shift of a stance for the overall market, and a trend change for, the next 5 years, 10 years, right?
Yeah, oil's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of things that could escalate out there very quickly. Like, again, I'm not the black swan guy, right? I'm not going to sit here and try to time a black swan or predict anything, but there's been a lot of stuff going on in the world that can like easily escalate. As far as war is concerned, and that's something that could probably trigger a rally in oil. So I think it's interesting, right? I think it's something to watch. Like we always say, there's always a bull market somewhere. Obviously right now that's in precious metals. Obviously that's in equities making fresh all-time highs. I would say the equities are starting to slow down a bit. I'm seeing some cracks there. But oil is definitely something interesting that I'm definitely going to keep an eye on. I'm not super, super well suited in trading oil, but I'm going to be looking into it. And I think it's worth paying attention to. But I think if oil does rally, that's probably going to put pressure on the market, if I had to guess. But I'm not 100% sure on that. I haven't done the back testing just yet, but we'll see. We'll see. But I think oil is worth paying attention to. Prometheus mentioned Exxon. This looks like a bullish compression above all-time highs. Looks interesting, right? So obviously Discord guys will get the more in-depth information, but I think it's worth paying attention to for sure.
You know what silver reminds me of is MicroStrategy. That structure. Very, very, very.
Prometheus, I don't know how you feel about this, but I was kind of comparing it to gold into like the March and April blow off that it had.
Mm-hmm. I saw that this morning. Yeah, it's consolidation makes sense. I mean, you just had a very, very large asset class, and not only a large asset class, but a very conservative one, and a commodity at that, seeing rapid price expansion. And as you can see on the chart there that, Louis is showing us, whenever we have massive expansionary moves like that on silver, it's generally some form of top. I actually had somebody over the weekend, I was talking to an advisor, and he's like, would you buy silver here? And I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would not buy silver. I would not touch it here. if you're not in from, around 40 to $47, it's like you miss the move, in my opinion. There's talks that silver is going to be going to, $300, $400. It's hard to say. You probably reached the saturation point, right? You have UAE coming out and saying that, they just added it to their sovereign fund and, all this yada, yada, yada. Historically, commodities actually degrade over time from a purchasing power perspective because of inflation. And I would be very shocked if this time is different. So, I mean, what that means to me is probably like a multi-decade consolidation that was spurred on due to a lot of tensions with regards to Eastern and Western governments. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I think industrial metals, though, like I said earlier at the beginning of the show, i.e. copper, still have probably some room to the upside.
Yeah, the move with silver is and sorry I'm not talking so much. I feel like I'm about to lose my voice if I push it too much. It's a very strange feeling. It actually happened to me earlier this year too. I think I've just been battling like a cold for a while. But the silver move is it is really interesting. I don't think I could possibly construct from like a sentiment perspective any more of like a blow off top signal ever. Like everybody is talking about silver, like random people talking about silver. I'm seeing social media people like pushing silver and stuff, but at the same time, like the technical chartist in me is looking at it going, yeah, we were in a 40-year range and we just broke out of it. Is there what's more likely, that it has like a quick turnaround, or that we just consolidated for 40 years and then broke out of it and the move is going to be pretty substantial? It's I'm torn. I don't want to chase it because sentiment is way overblown, but I also recognize that we did just break out of a 40-year consolidation. Like that is no joke. 45 years. That is, I don't know if I've ever seen a 45-year consolidation before. Like I don't think that exists.
It's coming to an Ethereum near you.
Dude, imagine if ETH is still under 5K 40 years from now.
We're going to be 70.
Be so funny.
I mean,
I
you
mean, it
guys know
wouldn't
how
be
they
funny.
talked about like putting the debt on the blockchain and then devaluing the debt. I do feel like that's probably the bull case for ETH at some point. It's like there's just going to be all this debt being put onto ETH and it's going to pump price really high, and then they're just going to rug it. They're going to rug it so hard. But I think it would come back. But I do think it could, if it does play out in theory, you could just see some absolutely hilarious price action on ETH someday. Even not as hilarious as a 4 or 5 year range that we're sitting in right now, but
yeah,
Gold's insane.
I think gold's ready for a pullback. More so to just
agree.
consolidate than really like give you a huge discount. But
and by the way, that's a bullish thing for Bitcoin. Typically, when we see gold cool off after a rally, Bitcoin usually finds some legs. So
That is true. That is true. We didn't see it here, though. On the last pullback. Or did we? Is that when we stabbed and made the fresh all-time high, November 10th? No. Yeah, it was down only. But yeah, I wouldn't be chasing any of these. That's for sure. You could see why, on these parabolic moves, 9-10% down days. First one in a while. we talked about it on the Discord this morning. If you get it, high 50s, low 60s, maybe. But if you don't get it, it's just not worth chasing, in my opinion.
Do you guys believe any of the rhetoric that a bank blew up? A bank
Guys,
blew up shorting a $2.5 trillion market cap asset. I don't know. Come on, be serious.
I don't think so, man. I think that's even more just kind of furthering the sentiment of like, the blow off top. You only get a blow off top if somebody gets, margin called and squeezed and the market gets cornered. And I don't think so, man. I mean, I don't give a shit if they do. Like, if you're that stupid, if you're a bank and you decide you're going to take like a directional position on a commodity that's breaking out of a 40-year range, you deserve to get blown up. But I don't know if I believe it, man. I think it's just people yapping.
Max, they're a bank. They're delta neutral because of course they are.
Yeah. Of course.
I've heard that before. How was good old Wintermute doing?
Probably fine.
They're probably printing. They're probably the one that's rinsing everybody right now.
Yeah, this is literally a market maker's dream.
Yeah.
Make them cross the spread and then annihilate their stops.
Yep.
Most people think market makers want volatility. It's actually the exact opposite. They hate volatility.
Yeah.
They hate it. Because you can't quote bid or the ask very accurately when there's so much realized volatility in a market. But I always soapbox about this. I won't do it again.
What do you guys think about Hyperliquid here, showing the strength it is?
I'm torn.
Let's see.
I'm torn, Prometheus.
It has its little glimmers where it's up like 3-4%. I think Tommy mentioned it this morning, but looking like a little more of a bear flaggy to me as well.
Dude, I think Hyperliquid looks insanely good, actually.
I
mean, this is my area. This is the area where I said I wanted to bid. Like I like that. But I would just hate to buy into like this just to get caught into that. So if you're gonna play it, I would play anything right now is tight stop, tight invalidation. You don't want to get left holding the bag. Set up below your low. You start seeing this, get out. I'm not completely sold yet, but I do like this area. Like if we get one more stab, we run all of this, and we can somehow get back above. I'd much rather play this than like right in the middle here, to be honest. Maybe that's me being a little greedy with an entry. But that seems to be working out more recently, just being patient. But yeah, no, this just looks like a bounce in a downtrend for now, unless it wants to squeeze, right? Which it can.
I just think there's so many complacent shorts in the market from higher prices. I'd be so shocked if they let them just ride this all the way down and not put some pressure on them at least.
Well, you know what they say about Max Payne positioning in a trend, Prometheus.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to gravitate away from Max Payne when the trend is strong. And that's kind of why I'm still just sitting in the camp of like, okay, well, people are maybe expecting a shoulder, maybe they're expecting more chop and range, but I think there's a lot communicating that volatility is just around the corner.
I was saying
I think they're going to be like the completion of the downtrend with the final move down, or that's going to be that the bottom is already in. And when we squeeze those altcoin shorts that you're talking about, which are there for the record, I mean, there are a lot of shorts. I mean, we're beginning to finally see like more meaningful hedging take place, especially on majors. I mean, funding went negative a few weeks ago. which it hadn't since basically April or May. So there are shorts to be punished. I think if you are punishing them, it's probably a sign that the trend has shifted or it's beginning to shift.
Yeah. I was talking to a buddy the other day. 'Cause there's a lot of things going around where it's like Bitcoin's going to hit 100K before end of year. Here's why, and stuff like that, which it totally can. Bitcoin can do whatever the fuck it wants. Excuse my language. And it tends to do so, right? Especially when, like Prometheus said, there's complacent shorts in the market, which there is, but also I would say maybe not. Just with the, I guess more so in altcoins like Bitcoin, like these squeezes. It's been very hard to short Bitcoin here locally if you didn't get your shorts in earlier in the month. But what I would say is, like, I feel like a lot of people are comparing Bitcoin price action and thinking we're like here, about to enter like a big shoulder, when in reality we're more so here, where we've already kind of put in this little pause, if you even want to call it a bounce, and we got 30% more to the downside to go, right? And everyone's looking for this like 40-50% shoulder to either get out or use the selling opportunity or just to play it to the long side, when in reality I think we're more so here. Not to say that we have to do this afterwards and then go lower, but I think as far as timing and everything, specifically, right? Even the dates, right? This was December 28th, 29th, like end of December, we were here. That's where we're at right now. Even the timing kind of lines up to where, like, yeah, everyone's looking for this big save, this big bounce to save us. When in reality, I think we're likely more closer to here than we would be here. So
I could see it.
see.
Yeah, you know what this price action is kind of reminding me a bit of, guys, is 2023. I'm gonna take it back to closer to the beginning of the cycle. When we look at the way that we traded in February and March of 2023, we had two very distinctive tops that formed. And then after the second one, we had kind of this more like prolonged systematic downtrend. Funding began to get really negative, or began to like creep into the negative territory as hedging pressure kind of came into the market. And then we had SVB happen, right? And the market capitulated. That's when funding got so deeply negative. It was one of the most brain dead long opportunities that I can ever remember in crypto. I don't know. I mean, like right now, very similar to what we saw at, what was it, like 22K? We're seeing, I think, volatility completely die out in the same way at range lows after a lot of positioning came in throughout the range. Are we going to have that capitulatory stab down below the range? And then we can talk about reversal after the fact. But just like the low volatility range that was just awful, horrendous to trade, really does remind me a lot of that 2023 price action.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Tommy, as well. I mean, typically when we do enter this like choppy, nasty, disgusting PA, it's more indicative to me of a bottom formation and some form of, dispersal in the market and just market makers, taking advantage of the conditions. And that means that forced sellers are largely out of the market, right? Which means we're closer to a bottom. I think we're probably actually going to pump from here, like I said. And that leads me to believe, too, where we're at is, a lot of people are calling for like, take the liquidity up at like 96, backfill the inefficiency up to 98, between 96 to 98, rolled over there, putting the fractal on from last cycle, the shoulder, being confident that, yada, yada, yada. And you see a lot of that kind of talk. Now that leads me to believe one or two things, because oftentimes the path that we take is the one, least talked about, at least in these spaces. And that means that the bounce is either going to be a whole hell of a lot higher than anybody is going to expect, or that there is nothing left in this market from a demand side, and you just grind down, and then there's going to be somebody or something, just like we had, a la, 2022, where somebody just, blows up, right? I don't think that we probably remain within this range much longer, in my opinion. I think that they can't pin it here for much longer. We'll see what happens. So I think the bounce is going to be a lot higher. I think the top is in for Bitcoin. Let that be clear from, for me. I think that the distribution is quite clear. And the divergence between the crypto market and equity markets now pins fund managers into a corner, and it forces them to unwind large amounts of their crypto positioning, right? And if we have that happening, I think that leads me to believe that this bounce is probably going a whole lot higher than people are going to expect. And I think you could even come up into like 106, take that shoulder high, and you're still going to roll over. And that would get so many people back into this market. And it would actually be a structural underside retest of the range that we had from 107 to 125. And then you'd have a rejection at value from there, because as of right now, since 107, you've had no real retest of, the value above 95K, right? There's been no retest of value. So kind of my thoughts here, being patient locally though, man. Time for me to get other things done and not stare at the charts. I have alerts on either side of the range, and I'll get pinged once we see movement. So,
man, I think the one thing I would not do is fade the break from this compression that we've been sitting in, right? Like, there is an outsized move cooking from the fact that we've now been consolidating here for about a month, and the fact that we're not pinned by options anymore. So got more freedom to move Bitcoin volatility a little bit more.
Well, and two, I mean, anybody that's shorted above 90K, is just not had to worry at all. And I most certainly think they're going to be putting quite a bit of pressure on all those shorts above 90K, because anytime price has gotten up to it, it just immediately rejects. And when you see complacency like that, but there's no fall through to the downside, right? It's like, okay, we revert to the origin of the move, but there's no follow through, right? And all those longs along that way where we're breaking from, these microstructures and diagonals and, yada, yada, yada. We're accepting, above 90K because we've been there for 15 minutes, are just getting rinsed out of this market. So we'll see what happens.
Because we've been there for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's real.
Dude,
So real.
The posts last night were crazy. When we had that pump, everybody's like, man, so back 250K inbound on BTC.
Yeah.
I know.
That's what I'm saying. People are still playing this, trying to play this alongside here,
I've just kept telling people, don't do shit until January 1st. You're just going to get chopped up. Don't trade options. They're going to burn to zero. Don't trade perps. It's going to be psychological torment. Just wait till January 1st. There is a huge move brewing here. I'm telling you, the break of value from this is going to be foul. We are going to either nuke through the floor or probably summer of 2021, run it back to new highs is kind of my feeling. I think there's going to be a huge, huge, huge trade to be had here in Q1. But I've seen this end of year price action before. There's nothing to do. Nothing. Zero.
Max, I need them to put volatility in this market before the end of the year. I'm going to go crazy. I know that's 2 days away, but it's too much to ask.
Wait, are you telling me that you haven't been 50R scalping this range with precision the whole time? These are the best trading conditions I've ever experienced. I love this. This is the best.
This is what my system was built for.
Meanwhile, people's system is literally just scrolling X to borrow conviction on a micro move. But I will say I think this is an incredibly awkward spot in the market but I do think that there's an incredibly, let me put it this way. I think there's an incredibly underpriced right tail probability that is not being considered appropriately.
Yes.
I think that the right tail is so deeply undervalued right now, or underpriced, that if we talk about the path of like most pain in terms of like people missing out, people overseeing, like, or kind of like overlooking an outcome, right now, I think that the right tail is actually the path of most pain, believe it or not. I think a lot of people are out of this market. I think there's a lot of people puking down here. I'm seeing daily, I mean, and this is not quantifiable, but like the trolling of crypto underperforming, the pet rocks, right? Stocks at all-time highs, crypto in the dumps again. And then just from a positioning skew, like, I'm not saying that we couldn't clean up those lows because they do look unresolved, but I am seeing some very attractive right tail trades to be taken early next year. Buying certain options for end of Q1 and Q2 at 10 to 30 cents a contract, pretty low risk, 10, 20, 30 to 1 payouts if Bitcoin gets back above 120 to 130 new highs. ETH, kind of the same thing. A lot of my systems right now they're not risk off anymore, they're neutral. And I think that, again, the side that is being severely overlooked right now is the right tail, not the left. I don't think this is 2022, to be clear, and I think that's the crowded idea. But I think if we're looking at this in terms of like, what would be the path of most pain? I think the path of most pain is everybody got carted out thinking that this was a standard 4-year cycle. And actually, Bitcoin runs back to new highs and we finally get alt season. And if you look at others' dominance, look at what month others' dominance rallied in the previous 2 cycles. The last week of December, both of the previous 2 cycles marked the bottom on others' dominance before like 5 or 6 months of up only. I think the right tail is not being priced in right now at all. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
I definitely agree that the right tail is not being priced in, at the very least, not on the index level, and really not on a lot of these individual names that do not belong in the Mag 7, right? I mean, everybody wants to be long big tech, but the pain trade, if there's not going to be any downside scariness over the next few weeks, which I do believe is totally possible, right? There's a lot of reasons I can point to for that. I won't get into them. I've touched on them plenty of times, but I mean, you have the S&P pressing up against price discovery, and the VIX does not look even remotely constructive, right? I think it was Prometheus that pointed out last week that every time that the S&P has not the S&P, but that the VIX has returned to like yearly lows, the market was higher a year later. So I think that the max pain could be, right, again, and I have to preface this always by saying, assuming there's no downside scaries over the next few weeks, a max pain would probably be a melt up that forces everybody into the market. And then I think then it's like your nightmare scenario of inflation, where people have been beating inflation by being in the market, and the market no longer provides those opportunities. I actually think that is max pain, that you end up YOLOing your net worth into assets that enter a deflationary period while we get hit with a massive wave of sustained inflation that the market cannot combat for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for locally, the SPX, what Louis has up there, if we can start accepting above 7,000, we're going to start seeing some continuation. And especially as we go into the beginning of next year, once we get through this OPEX, because, this options, dealer cluster, we'll call it, has been a magnet, but it's also been the bane of our existence at the same time, where we've done nothing, right? And as you clear those, all that gamma and the dealer clusters off the board, and you roll over into new expiration, it really opens up the door for more opportunity, which is going to be a fantastic thing. But the beginning of the year is going to be a telltale sign of where we're headed, specifically for Q1 of next year. If we can open up the year, see some trend to the upside, see some continuation, then that in confluence with the VIX and volatility structurally collapsing in on itself, 52-week lows, you're in melt up, right? You're in melt up. I messaged to the guys over the weekend, and I told them that on Friday, we saw massive amounts of flows come in at 7,000 on the SPX, and we'll see if that, kind of continues to drag price higher. Because ever since we've been, ever since the April lows, we've really just been, we've been just magnetized to the larger dealer clusters for options. And if we can do that, I think we can see a lot of continuation. And like Max said, a lot of people are not prepared for new highs. I'm not prepared for new highs. I have quite a few longs open right now, locally speaking, but I would be taking profits on them well before we get to new highs. But at that point, I think that there would be a pretty mean catch-up trade to be had in a lot of altcoins that if you're able to be flexible about or with your thesis in the higher time frame, right? Not worry about being wrong and more so be willing to make some money, you could hit some really nice rotations, even if you're still bearish high time frame.
I think the market is very path dependent right now. There are a lot of different ways that things could go, which I know doesn't really help anybody to say that, right? It's like, oh, it could go up, it could go down. Thank you, Tommy. But this kind of feels like the most binary point for markets that I can remember, really since the cycle started.
Yeah, I think we're gonna know pretty quickly into the next year. I'll be honest. I think that. So I look at this idea that Louis has, right, and I do believe that our directionality is really going to be anchored to what equities do, 100%. Here's the only problem I have with this idea, Louis, is that I could go back and find 50 failed patterns that look exactly like this one that just continue to chop and grind higher. This is like the stairway to heaven pattern where every shallow higher high looks like a deviation. I'm not saying this one isn't. It's just that I could literally find you 50 examples in the next 5 minutes of this exact pattern that just didn't play out for the S&P 500. So I think it almost will pay to be a little bit late shorting equities if we are going to go down, but they can really keep this thing afloat for a long time. So I just think that like technical pattern trading in equities, you have to be a lot more patient and a lot more skeptical and kind of wait for confirmation a lot more than crypto, where crypto has nobody holding it up because it's a scam, and equities have everybody with money and power and influence in the world holding it up because the whole system will collapse if this thing collapses. So I think you just kind of have to contextualize this pattern with like well, it's early, but maybe. But I will say, like, it looks like maybe we're losing a little bit of momentum, but then I look at the VIX and I'm like, do I really think they're gonna like ramp the VIX here? I don't know if I think they are personally, not yet. Kind of looks like we're underside retesting a breakdown to me, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
You know what the VIX looks like to me? Because our trend on VIX and volatility, it really started back in March of 24. And that's, if you look at it, from a timing perspective, that was kind of around the time people probably started to realize that Trump was going to be. I mean, it was around the time we saw the ramp up into the Japan carry trade, but it was also around the time people started to realize that it could very well be a real thing that Trump was going to, be president. And people are probably starting to realize now that, Trump might not actually be effing things up like as much as people thought he was going to. And if you're seeing that certainty come back into the market where, hey, this is actually a lot more stable than what we thought was going to happen. You see the regime shift, and on that chart, Louis, if you pull a trend line from the May 24 lows, looks like you stepped away.
I'm here.
From the May 24 lows, and if you pull it from those lows all the way back to the left, May 24. Yeah, from those lows, and you kind of pull a trend line all the way up, touching, those lows, right there. We've now collapsed underneath structurally. And if we remained underneath there, it's pretty significant, at least in my eyes, that there's no reason we should be seeing a big unwind, barring we don't have a black swan event.
I agree.
Funny language there. Unless we have a black swan.
You got to throw your hedge in there. You got to hedge yourself, You got to say you're short silver and then post on X that you closed your shorts and you made 160K even though you're net short, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If this move on the VIX continues, I could see it going all the way down to like 10 or 11 before it bounces. I'm not like really that convicted in that, but if we are going to melt up, you're probably going to see the VIX come down to like that low before we see a bounce. And then you're going to likely see it move up with price at a certain point, because volatility at that level would just be so discounted that you'd have to be buying it, right? Like,
dude, options are so cheap right now too, though. It's like such a nice, like if you need to hedge, puts are super, super, super cheap right now for the most part. Obviously, depending on what you're buying them on. So you can get some really nice convexity, like Tommy likes to say.
Yes. All about the rapid rate of change. Fractal Chud mode. I am an event enjoyer. But I'm kind of like my stance has been kind of the same for the last few weeks as it is now. Like, I like short-term left tails, not necessarily on explicit volatility, more so kind of individual names that are feigning weakness because they'll puke really hard. And those options are mispriced. And so are I think 2027 calls for things like indices. I think they're mispriced. Probably great way to play upside. Like, if you're concerned about, for me, it's like, oh, I think crypto could bounce here. Well, what asset do I buy? Well, why am I even trying to overcomplicate things when, for example, like deeply out of the money calls on the S&P are going to outperform probably any asset in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And if you run the options calculator, you will see what I mean. We're talking about like many multiples returning. If we actually are going to melt up from here, calls that have not moved for months, and they probably won't move until we go higher. But eventually there's going to come a point where if you're melting up, the VIX and the skew for options will flip, so that the market moving up that aggressively would cause the VIX to move up, and you get that extra juice to your options. I mean, we haven't really seen that this cycle. Maybe we don't get to see it, but it's kind of like a fabled scenario, right? Price up, volatility up. Everybody keeps saying that it can happen, and it just hasn't. It could, right? It could. Prometheus highlighted the number. Like, if we start accepting above 7K, where are we going to stop? A lot higher.
Yeah. I don't want to rush into a directional call, because I don't think now is the time to do it. But I don't know. I feel like they're cutting rates. The economy is still relatively strong. I mean, it's still strong. The only real crack I've seen is that there is a slow uptick in the labor market. Unemployment's at a 24-month high. QE coming back moderately, slowly. Risk we never saw, like, even if you were to look at the equal weighted S&P, right? RSP, I think is the ticker. It's like we really only saw like a face melting bull market for like 7 to 10 names. Things have done all right, but we haven't been in some like crazy euphoric bull market. You know, we haven't seen people move down the risk curve this cycle at all, which again it's a distinct characteristic of late stage cycle or cycles, not just in crypto, but in everything. To see the rising tide that lifts all ships, and then people start moving really far down the risk curve. We never saw that. So I just keep asking myself, like, what's really going to tank this thing?
Well, I
Maybe
think it's
this
the
is an
same
elongated
tickers.
cycle where we are early, you know? And by the way, if we kind of pin the term cycle, if we pin it to this idea of a cycle is Fed policy driven, right? And their moves will tell us exactly where we are within the cycle. Does the cycle begin or end when QT ends? Think about that. Why would an economic cycle this time around, why would it end as we're cutting rates and QE's coming back? We could be in for volatility, but cyclically speaking, we're like mid-cycle, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. My argument to that would just be that, like you mentioned, it's only been a handful of tickers that have been leading this 3-year long bull run in equities. I think that's more of a risk first before we see the dispersion down the risk curve. Like I don't think I mean, it totally can, right? We totally just could see an even, steady flow out of those names down, into other equities at value. But I feel like that poses a risk first before, the market kind of corrects itself, being that, the S&P rally has been led by like 7 to 8 names. I think that's more of a risk, at least in the short term, right? Like eventually, I think if we do see some air like let out of the bubble in those names, I think it's down first. And then, we head into this regime where, QT's ending, they're turning the money printer on. I just don't think it's a free melt up trade from here, like many are expecting, right? We've had a 3-year long bull run, pretty much up only off the March, April lows in equities. Everyone pretty much is consensus that we're just going to continue to melt up from here, which makes sense into the regime we're entering into. But I think the wrench that gets thrown in there is that we see a scare or a drop first. And this is pure speculation, of course. And then, they really ramp up the money printer, the lowered interest rates, and then we see some sort of recovery out of that. And that'll speed up the process of all of that. But I just don't see, I mean, it totally could happen. I just don't think it's likely just to melt up from here, which it can. But I'd still remain cautious as far as equities are concerned first. Like I'd want to see more confirmation of higher, like Prometheus said, like sustained above 7K on the S&P. They can do that for more than a week or two. Okay, yeah, they're going to melt it up, right? And then there's but if that's the case, there's so much stuff sitting at value that we've mentioned. We have time and opportunity to play some of that stuff to the long side. But if you're playing it here in the face of potential downturn first, you're not going to have the money to play it if and when it comes, right? So I don't know. I'm still skeptical on equities. I am. I know you mentioned like there's several times where, a structure like this, where a slightly higher high doesn't end up being the deviation. My argument to that would be those occur when equities in a stronger uptrend. Like you could see it here, right? How like we had a nice steep curve. You're getting these slightly higher highs that look like deviations and coming down, but the difference is you're still kind of in an uptrend when you're doing that. Like same thing here, and you're still in a steep uptrend, so they were able to save it and continue the march higher. But when you come into a market structure where the price stalls out, and we've been ranging sideways now for 3 months, when you look at fresh all-time highs out of a ranging environment in equities versus versus a strong uptrend, you do see downside where the all-time high breakout or fresh all-time high like we saw last week is actually more of a trap, like very similar to what we saw early last year, right? Where we made fresh all-time highs twice, right? We looked weak going into the end of the year. They gapped price back up. You made a fresh all-time here. They gapped it down. They chopped it around. They made another fresh, minute all-time high here. But we were ranging sideways for a long time. And that fresh all-time high that lasted a day ended up being, the last high before a multi-month downtrend. And this ended up being like a 16% down move in the S&P. So when it's in a strong uptrend, bear trap, right? Bear trap, and continues higher. But when you're kind of ranging like this and you're making minute fresh all-time highs after ranging, you're more at risk, right? And another example is the 2021 all-time high here, right? Where again, you were ranging sideways for a while, right? You started ranging in November. You gapped up, you made a fresh all-time high, literally almost to the day that we did it just now, this past week, December 27th, last week of the year. They made fresh all-time highs, but price couldn't sustain that, couldn't continue to rally, stalled, and then bang, we were back underneath the old all-time highs a week or two later, beginning of January, and again, started a multi-month, even year-long downtrend. So, the risk is to the downside as far as equities are concerned, in my opinion. Unless it can prove it. But I think, like we've all been saying, trying to get that signal and answer right now into the last couple of days of the year, not likely. But I think a couple weeks into the fresh year can give us that information, where this again was trading into all-time highs first week into the year, couldn't sustain it, right? Bang, back down. And then that was it. And we didn't even see that big of a breakout here last week. We just kind of saw a little blip above. Now we're seeing some weakness back below, more so kind of what we did here, right? So I don't know. I'm still skeptical. I wouldn't be buying at least the major names here, right? There's stuff sitting at value in the stock market, but like I said, and Max said, the 7, 8, 9, 10 names that have been super strong leading this rally in the S&P look more vulnerable to downside than more upside, right? Like it feels as if a lot of that juice has already been squeezed out of those names. And sure, we could recover out of that. We could see money flow into the other names, but that's first going to lead to a sell-off first, right? Because the money coming out of those names, people taking profits, just as those names going up has led, that'll also lead to the downside as well. So that's just my thoughts. And I've been talking about this for a while. But, if we go a couple weeks into next year and, they're still chugging this thing along, fresh all-time highs, maintaining above 7K, something like that, I'm off sides. We flip long back on equities. But for now, I'm skeptical and short a bit here on the equity side.
I think that it makes sense to be skeptical until proven otherwise, based on the weakness that we've seen in crypto. I mean, it's pretty rare that we see crypto just sell off. idiosyncratically versus equities, it usually is a sign that equities are not that far away from kind of completing a similar looking move or doing the whole thing in one go, kind of like what we saw in March and April. Yeah, no, I mean, I do think you have the like ability to be patient too, because specifically if you're trading crypto, these structures are safe to say they're not the healthiest, right? So maybe you have to buy a little bit higher to wait for that confirmation that you need to get invested in it. But I don't think that it's going to be just one day be reversing to new highs, and just leaving you behind. It's probably going, like, if it's going to happen, it's going to be kind of a slow process where we slowly climb the wall of worry. We make people think that it's a shoulder at every turn, and then, they just eventually make new highs. But I do think if that's going to be the case, we're going to get signal from equities ahead of time, right? Like, are we ripping above 7K? Are we just, showing this marauding strength to the upside in equities where I have to keep making the joke during my intro. Yeah, crypto's not really doing anything, but equities are green, of course, another day. I kind of feel like that's how it would sentimentally play out. But no, I think there's a very healthy skepticism that you have to have about risk right now, just given the way that crypto is trading. It's kind of been bullshit detector for market liquidity and really like further upside for the last few years. It was kind of that way in 2021 and 2022, even though I don't like the comparison between those two cycles. But it's a bullshit detector, for a lack of a better term. So we'll see how it plays out. But I mean, I think that's a perfectly fair take, Louis.
Russell too. I mean, this looked promising a couple weeks ago. Looking a little trappy here, right? Not to say this has to come all the way back down, but right now, like, struggling to hold on to this local high, all-time high breakout again. Like if I'd much rather like see this and be like, okay, like this is real. Russell's breaking out. This is a great risk on indicator for crypto. But you start seeing this, bullshit.
I don't like the look of the Russell at all. Like, it kind of looks like it's about to go straight down. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. it's a risk. It's a risk. It's again, it needs to prove it to me, right? It faked us out here. It faked us out here. Looks like another fake out here, right? Again, doesn't mean it has to come all the way down, but you can see this, right, before this. So yeah, I'd want to see this resolved as well.
I actually don't hate puts on this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to short if we roll over is RKLB.
Robinhood, Prometheus. Robinhood.
No, I want to short the space trade. And the reason why I say that is it's just pure speculation.
It is. It's like the most speculative thing you can possibly put money in, I feel like, right now.
Yes. There's divergence on RSI too there on the daily. Weekly candle looks atrocious. Yeah. I think that this presents a pretty fantastic short opportunity. And they also have a launch coming up, I think, the beginning of the year, if I'm not mistaken. And literally their entire company rides on that single rocket. Yeah.
Dude, I'm pretty sure there's a scene in the show Billions where they're like betting that a rocket's like a launch is going to fail. And then like the guy dies and they all start celebrating. It's going to be you.
Oh my goodness. I would never celebrate if somebody died. But I mean, if the rocket blows up with some,
the rocket blows up and nobody dies, then it's great, right?
Yeah.
He'll make it.
We simply gamify everything, apparently. Yeah, no, I agree with you though, Prometheus. I mean, I feel like I was kind of thinking about this over the break, that it is literally the most speculative narrative in all of markets right now, is like, what about future revenue can you even project from a space company right now? It's like SpaceX trying to IPO at $1.5 trillion. That's insanity to me. It's just insane. If you want to be bullish on space, I'm going to say it again. It's not a cheap stock. Obviously, it's the second most expensive company in the world. Apple, if you want to bet on space, like they have great satellite technology. They're going to be a competitor for Starlink. I don't know how big that market is, but if you want probably like a safe exposure to space that's not overwhelmingly speculative like a lot of the other plays, like Apple is probably a pretty good bet. Oh, my cat finally moved so I can lean back. Been sitting up like very awkwardly this whole show. Oh,
I will say the CEO of Rocket Lab is an absolute savage. So it's not like one of those companies where I want to be short it for a long time. It's like get a little bit of exposure. If it runs in my favor, then get out. Yeah, if we were talking about space and Tucker was here, he would have something to say about it.
I think Max has something to say about it too. But
I know Max is secretly steaming and boiling inside, just ready to just drop the real facts about, you know, them not actually putting anything out there, just all fugazi
about the space LARPs.
Well, look, man. I mean, it's here's the thing: is like I have a 2.5-year-old, and a lot of the time when I'm playing with my kid, who I love dearly, it's like I'm talking and playing about make-believe things that are not real, you know? So I've actually gotten quite good at just kind of playing along with, fugazis, you know? So I guess that's my answer. Why are you investing in space?
When you could invest in alternative cryptographic currencies.
Buy my shitcoin, you know?
Man, Louis, I'm glad you showed IWM. That looks like complete booty cheeks.
Yeah, not looking great. But there were a ton of people longing that into the Fed meeting a couple weeks ago, thinking they had a free long once again, with the rate cutting supposedly on the horizon.
It looks like an attractive short to me right now. I'm just gonna be honest. Like I never chart IWM ever, just because, not that I don't think it's like high signal, but I try to take more signal from like the S&P and QQQ. So I just don't really look at IWM. But that looks to me like an over-under deviation setup with a lower time frame complacency shoulder. It looks bad. Looks really bad. Like bad enough that it could be going down to the April lows. Don't know.
All right.
But it all depends on, the Kevin Hassett theory. The economy is going to be great next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's my only thought is like I've been misled by many Russell candles over the past year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put too much weight in December 29th Monday red candle. Not to dismiss the higher time frame pattern, because I see what you're talking about, but we could very easily just like reverse this thing tomorrow. You know what I mean? It could within 24 hours look entirely different. But yeah, man, the best way I can describe Ethereum and Bitcoin here is like they genuinely just look unresolved. Like they look unfinished, that bottom looks unfinished to me. But it's hard for me to want to get super bearish right now. I feel like that's not gonna that setup.
We're doing the Snorlax straddle, the short term left tail, long term right tail. Both very cheap.
Yeah,
not doing too
I
much
just
planning
really I
until
feel
next
like
year.
we deserve some upside next year, and I feel like it's not being appropriately priced in. So I have to, like, gun to my head, I have to lean towards like a little bit of upside to start. Like I think this structure should resolve up, but I'm very, very flexible on that idea. So
Yeah. I mean, you got to think about it. Like, are they going to leave 26 with zero price action to the upside? Probably not. Like, they're probably going to give us, some form of wick to the upside on that 12-month. Be
yeah,
very shocked if they don't.
yep. I would agree with you there.
Yeah, but it can come from here.
It can. It definitely can. Something I was looking at on Bitcoin too, from a potential bottom perspective, is like put in some form of bull div down below that low, because right now it does not look like accumulation. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It does not look like accumulation at all. I just think they're going to rent shorts. Like that's like my thesis. Is like there's just complacent shorts, and if this is a high 10 frame bottom, you're gonna, like Max said, it's not resolved. It's going lower.
I will say this though, ETH has been famous, not so much Bitcoin, but ETH has been famous for printing unresolved bottoms before. I've
Mhm.
talked about this at length. Most of Ethereum's bottoms going back the past 3 or 4 years, they don't look like resolved bottoms. They look like lows that are left for later. Basically, all of them look unresolved. Bitcoin usually is pretty good about it. So I'm a bit torn. But I think those that have waited to trade ETH on the perfect clean bottom have been left uninvested, which for the most part's been a very good thing for you to be uninvested in Ethereum. But I do think looking at this, you wanna also be aware that Ethereum is just a piece of shit and it doesn't typically clean up the bottoms. So
I will say this. I feel like I don't know if I've said this on Market Check before, but I mean, I know you guys remember at the beginning of the year when Trump launched the meme coin, there was all that extraction going on chain, and everybody was saying like, yeah, the crime and fraud is going to pump our market higher rather than just extract lots of value, which is what ended up happening in hindsight. But I feel like we're getting to that point with equities where the fraud and the crime is extracting significant amounts of value, and we're saying that it's going to be bullish. And maybe, I'm not saying the party's over, right? Because it absolutely can continue. And I think especially when we're talking about as crimey and scammy as equity markets are, that crime can continue. But I'm starting to get the same vibe from equities. And I think, I mean, I don't want to make a political statement, right? But like the kind of the development in your city, Max, in Minneapolis, like we're seeing all of this fraud get uncovered. And it's just like 2026 is just going to be max extraction mode.
I mean, bro, I'm
happens,
gonna use this time to make the announcement. I was gonna wait for next week, but I'm actually resigning from my position at Because Bitcoin, effective January 1st. I'm starting a new business. Does anyone want to know what it is, or
Is it called Because Daycare? Because Daycare,
Somalia?
or because
it's because Leering.
Leering Center.
Yeah, Because Leering, and I'm gonna be teaching children how to leer. And yeah, I've already been approved for $2.7 million in subsidies from the state next year. So, yep, I've been approved for 109 children to occupy the Because Leering Center. And yeah, bring your kids by. There's no spots available, but bring your kids by to the Because Leering Center. So yeah, I'm actually retiring, and yeah, it's gonna be great, guys. Wish me luck, because Leering. You know what sucks the most about all that fraud in Minnesota is that I got clobbered paying taxes to the state, man. We get destroyed in Minnesota. We pay so much property tax. It's insane. And we pay so much state income tax. And we have the biggest fucking idiots like steering our ship, man. They're so stupid. And it's bad, man. It's so bad. Like, dude, I don't even want to get into it, but it's like I had to move out of the Twin Cities. I lived in the Twin Cities for 7 years. And then my garage kept getting broken into. And like I found my car up on blocks in my garage. So like it's like, all right, I'm out of here. Fuck this. Like,
Jeez.
and we had to leave. Like we just left. I'm not even gonna get into the stories because like that's not what I'm here for. But man, it's so much worse than you guys even think. Like it's a dumpster fire, man. Like everyone I know has moved out of the cities. Like literally everybody lived there for years. Everybody's left. But the suburbs are super nice. Like you move 30 minutes out of the city, it's beautiful. But yeah, man, it's so much worse than you think. Like the cities, outside the city's great, but like, dude, in the city is just.
I have
It's
no
a-
doubt that mine is the same, Max. Like,
Yeah,
it's actually infuriating knowing what we pay in taxes and basically just funneling money into fraud. That's what it
it's
is.
so bad. I try to not even really think about it because it kind of makes me angry, and there's nothing I can do about it, you know. But then it's like I had a friend. I guess he's a friend. Like he's more of like he's much older than me, but like we talk about crypto and shit once in a while. He got audited by the state for literally no reason. Like just like got audited, you know. And I'm like, this guy didn't do shit. Like he owns a business. He's a great guy. Like he's been like a contributor to like our society for years, you know. And he maybe like made a mistake that triggered something. And I'm like, so you guys want to take a look at him, but not like all this blatantly obvious fraud? And I'm like, what is going on here? It's so backwards. But
The
yeah,
purpose,
I try not to think about it because it just makes me angry, you know. But it's bad, man. It's really bad. Like it makes me sad the state of my state, you know.
the purpose of the system is what it does at the end of the day.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, man, it's like think about the DMV, for example, right? Like super broken. You go to the DMV, it takes like 3 hours to get a new license. If that was a private business and you went to go get like a new card for whatever, say it was like a local co-op and you needed like a membership card, or like Costco, you need a membership card and it would take you 3 hours to renew every few years. You'd be like, I'm dropping this membership. Like your business is horrible. I'm not sitting here for 3 hours to like renew my membership effectively. So like you get to kind of vote people into business, right? When it's privatized. Okay, this business is run well. I'm going to cast my vote to keep them open by spending money at their shop, right? I like their process. I like their products. When it's the government, when it's the DMV, you have nowhere else to go. It's a process that is monopolized. You don't have a choice to shop elsewhere. You have to go there. You have to pay them. You have to basically go through this broken process. You pay to keep it open. And that's the problem with, all these publicly subsidized, anything organizations, is that it's a broken process where like you do not have any say in it. You are forced to be a participant in it, and it's broken, and nobody's paying close attention to it because it doesn't demand profitability to keep its doors open. It's subsidized, right? Subsidies, not profitized. So it's just it feels like if you put most sharp business people into an elected position, they would be able to fix a lot of these problems very quickly, is what it feels like. maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's just like a doomed system, and there's just too much tape around the whole thing, and there's too much bureaucracy where even if you put the right people in the right positions, the best economists in the world, best law enforcement officers, tried to even like work and partially privatize certain wings of the government for efficiency purposes, right? Um, basically required that your state at minimum can't be running a deficit every single year. And Minnesota was running a surplus for many years, to be super clear. This year now we're running a deficit. It's like a 25 roughly $1 billion swing, which is insane. I don't know. I'm like, who are these people that like get elected into office and just cannot figure it out? Because a lot of this stuff doesn't seem that complicated.
They can't figure it out. They don't. The purpose of the system is exactly what it does, Max.
Is that just to overcomplicate everything and burn money and pull money out of the
Make it as
pockets
complicated
of
as possible so fraud can slip under the, slip under the rug.
Yeah. I don't know. I have thought about like what it would be like to run for office one day, because I used to have to, in real estate, I used to have to deal with city council a lot when we were trying to even remodel certain units or buildings or do remodels. I did a couple developments, and like I've thought about like, maybe I should get involved. Like I feel like I feel like I have a fresh perspective compared to a lot of the people that were serving on the council at the time. And I was living in St. Paul, and it's like, then I really thought about it, and I'm like, nah, I kind of want people to just like leave me alone. Like I don't want my life flipped upside down because I feel like sharing an idea on how we could better the city. It's like, and I think that's part of the problem too, is that not even talking about myself, but a lot of smart people are sort of disincentivized to actually get involved because they don't want to go through the hazing of it. Usually they have some money, they have a business, they have a family, they're social. They don't want to go through the hazing ritual of trying to make a difference, right? That's why you have buffoons running our system when you have some of the best scientists and doctors in the world. You have some of the best economists in the world. You have people with multiple PhDs. You have authors. You have, really sharp people that all go to the private sector because they're like, I'll just make money and I'll start a charity if I want to make a difference. I'm not going to make a difference on this sinking ship, I don't know. It's sad, man. I'm just angry that I was forced out of St. Paul is what it is, man. I had a house there. I lived there for 7 years. Sad. It's sad. I used to live near where Tim Walz lives. He lives on Summit. The governor's mansion is on Summit Avenue. I used to live like 5 minutes away from him. Used to drive by it all the time. Nice house. Happy he's doing well.
Easy to see why.
Fucking idiot that guy is. All right. Anyways, let's end the show.
All right, guys. That's the end of the show. We hope you enjoyed potentially the last market check of the year. Hard to believe, man. 2025 has definitely been it's been a year of a lot of ups and downs, we'll call it, both literally and figuratively, throughout markets. Hoping that 2026 will be better, obviously, for not just for the world, but obviously for the crypto markets as well. Yeah, we hope you enjoyed the show today, guys. A reminder that we host Market Check Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, whenever the New York Stock Exchange is open. So that's when you'll be able to catch us again. Otherwise, we'll see you. We'll see you when we see you. But our typical start time is around 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So catch us then. But also make sure to tune in for Market Talk, hosted by the legendary King Wabi. I'm sure he'll have a great show for you guys as we head into the end of the year as well. But his show, typical start time around 3:30 p.m. EST. So check that out later this afternoon and throughout the week. Thank you guys, though, for being here. We hope you enjoyed the show. Ready to tackle 2026. And until next time, guys, thanks again. And of course, stay safe.
Tired of outdated trading tools, confused charts, dozens of tabs, endless stress? You're not alone. Introducing BB Terminal, your all-in-one command center for crypto trading. Track your portfolio, monitor the markets, stay ahead, all in one place. From chaos to clarity, from struggle to success. BB Terminal,